A tray crashed. Food scattered across the tile. E.J. Whitmore froze. His crutch ripped from under him, held high like a trophy. "Careful, limp," one bully sneered. The crowd howled. Phones shot up, red lights glowing like hungry eyes. Another shoved him, juice soaking his shirt. "Billionaire baby can't even stand," chants echoed. Cruel and rhythmic. "Fight, fight, fight." Some kids laughed, others just stared. At the far table, Amara Johnson set down her chopsticks, quiet, steady, watching. The bullies didn't notice her stand, not yet. And when she did, nothing in that glittering cafeteria would ever be the same. This is Black Stories, where the pain of prejudice is told and justice always finds its voice. If you believe schools should protect courage, not cruelty, like this video, and lean in because sometimes the quietest one in the room delivers the loudest lesson. Also, hit subscribe because we share more stories like this every week. E.J. Whitmore knew humiliation like a shadow that never left. At 10 years old, he had already buried more than most adults could bear. His mother, Clara, the soft-voiced woman who tucked him in with stories about constellations, was gone. Cancer had taken her one quiet night, leaving behind the echo of her last words. "The stars don't care how fast you walk, E.J. They shine for you anyway." But E.J. didn't feel like the stars shone for him. Not at Crestwood Academy. He walked with an uneven gait, each step uneven because of the condition he was born with. Every hallway became a gauntlet. Sneakers squeaked behind him, mocking his limp. Whispered nicknames followed him like arrows. Crippled Prince. Billionaire baby. Does daddy's money carry you too? He hated that one most because while his father had more money than anyone could imagine, it couldn't fix the one thing E.J. wanted more than anything else. To just feel normal. Richard Whitmore, Billionaire CEO, tried to be a father, but he spoke in contracts and deadlines, not lullabibbies. After Clara died, his love for E.J. was hidden under meetings, flights, handshakes that mattered more than bedtime stories. He didn't mean to neglect his son, but absence leaves wounds just the same. So E.J. shrank. He ate alone. He kept his eyes on the ground. He carried his mother's words like a shield, even when his body trembled under the weight of cruelty. And across town, another child carried a different kind of grief. Amara Johnson was no stranger to being underestimated. Her father, Master Anthony Johnson, was once the pride of their neighborhood, a decorated martial artist. He believed the dojo wasn't just for kicks and punches. It was a sanctuary. In a community where kids stumbled into gangs before they stumbled into high school, Anthony lit a different path. His mantra was simple. Repeat it until it hummed in Amara's bones. Never throw the first punch. Never fight for ego. Protect the weak. Amara was 10 when the heart attack came. One moment her father's laughter echoed in the dojo. The next, silence swallowed it. Her mother, Yvonne, worked nights as a nurse, her back aching from double shifts. Bills piled on the kitchen counter like enemies they couldn't fight. Clothes came from thrift stores, shoes worn thin. But what Amara inherited wasn't money. It was her father's code. She trained alone in the cracked dojo, bowing to a ghost. Every stance, every form was a conversation with the man she lost. But she didn't brag, didn't show off. She blended in at Crestwood Academy. Just another charity case with a scholarship. The whispers followed her too. She doesn't belong here. Look at those shoes. Charity girl. Yet behind her, silence was steel. Where E.J. shrank, Amara observed. Where he endured, she prepared. They were two kids from opposite worlds. One draped in wealth but starved of love. The other clothed in thrift but armored in discipline. Both invisible in their own way. Both mocked for things they never chose. And fate placed them in the same cafeteria. For E.J., every day was survival. For Amara, every day was restraint. Neither asked to be tested. But life always tests the quiet ones, because bullies always look for the weak. And what they didn't know was that neither E.J. nor Amara was weak. One carried his mother's voice like a star guiding him through darkness. The other carried her father's code like fire in her veins. They were the kind of children the world overlooks until the day it can't anymore. Crestwood Academy was polished to a shine that never dulled. The halls gleamed like glass. Floors buffed until students could check their designer sneakers in their reflection. Tesla doors hissed open at drop-off. Chauffeurs carried monogrammed backpacks inside as if they were crown jewels. Rolex watches flashed beneath fluorescent lights. Everything in this place whispered power or shouted it. For E.J., every step down those halls was an echo chamber of judgment. The limp in his walk drew stares he pretended not to see. The laughter he caught from behind wasn't jokes. It was darts. Even here among children born into the same wealth, he was different. Not for what he had, for what he lacked. Careful, limp. Don't trip, Prince. He tried to ignore it. Eyes on the floor, shoulders tight. His crutch tapped like a metronome, each beat reminding him he didn't move like everyone else. And Amara, she didn't glide down those halls in Gucci sneakers or Balenciaga hoodies. She walked with thrift store jeans and shoes her mother found at a clearance rack, their soles worn thin. She carried the same backpack she'd had since middle school, its zipper catching every time she pulled it. She ate the same lunch every day, rice and beans or leftover noodles her mother packed in Tupperware. And in a cafeteria where kids swiped cards loaded with unlimited funds for pizza, sushi, and milkshakes, her meal was a spotlight. Smells like broke, someone sneered once. Phones recorded the laughter, but not her steady hand as she kept eating, eyes never lifting. At Crestwood, wealth wasn't just currency, it was armor. EJ had it, but didn't wear it. Amara didn't have it at all. Both walked unprotected in a kingdom built on status, and bullies feed on that. Jason Miller was the kind of king. Crestwood crowned without question. Blonde hair slicked back, family's name etched into the gymnasium wall, sneakers that cost more than some parents' monthly rent. His laugh was loud because no one dared silence it. His crew, Connor Hale and Bryce Turner, walked behind him like shadows. Each insult he spat echoing as gospel. They didn't trip over cracks in the floor because the floor itself bent for them. They didn't eat in corners because the cafeteria bent around their table. Kids jockeying for a seat near their orbit. EJ invisible until they decided to see him. Amara, a target the second she stepped into their line of sight. The cafeteria was where the hierarchy drew blood. Phones angled at the ready, red recording lights flashing like hungry eyes. Cruelty wasn't just expected. It was content. Students didn't ask, should I stop this? They asked, will this go viral? It was a Friday. The room humming with end-of-week energy. Laughter bounced off polished walls. Trays clattered like cymbals. And then it happened. Jason's shadow stretched over EJ's table. His smirk was sharp, his eyes daring. Connor cracked his knuckles. Bryce pulled out his phone, already recording. One shove, one toppled tray, juice spilling down EJ's shirt like a stain that wouldn't wash out. The cafeteria erupted, not in outrage but in glee. Gasps turned into laughter. Cruel chants began to stir, and in the far corner, Amara's chopsticks froze mid-air, Hearies locked on the scene. The battlefield was set. The shove came fast, sharp, cruel. Jason's palm slammed into EJ's chest, sending him stumbling backward. His tray tilted, crashing to the floor. Milk bursting across the tiles and a white splash that dripped down his shirt like war paint. The cafeteria roared. Not with outrage, with laughter. Phones tilted higher, recording from every angle. The chant began in the back, low at first, then louder. Fight, fight, fight. EJ's hands trembled as he reached for his crutch. But Connor snatched it up first, waving it overhead like a trophy. Who wants it? He jeered. The crowd howled. Some leaned over tables, eager for the show. Others hid nervous smiles, afraid to be next if they didn't laugh. The cafeteria wasn't just a room anymore. It was an arena. EJ's shoulders hunched. His breath came short and sharp. He wanted to disappear, to shrink into the floor. And then Amara moved. She didn't rush, didn't shout. She rose from her corner table, every step deliberate, her face unreadable. Chopsticks still in her hand. She crossed the room like someone walking into the eye of a storm. At first, no one noticed her. The phones were all pointed at EJ, the billionaire's son, humiliated in front of his peers. But then Jason caught her in his peripheral vision. His smirk widened. Well, look who it is. The charity girl! Connor laughed, waving the crutch higher. You his bodyguard now? You going to limp with him too? The cafeteria erupted again. Laughter, cruel echoes. But Amara didn't flinch. She bent down not to confront Jason, but to pick up EJ's tray. She set it gently back on the table, then reached for his chair, righting it with calm, practiced hands. Her movements were slow, measured, controlled. EJ looked up at her, stunned. She didn't say a word, but her eyes locked on his, steady as stone. You're not alone, Jason sneered. Oh, that's cute. What is this, a pity party? He stepped closer, close enough that his breath brushed her cheek. Tell you what, let's see what you've got, charity girl. He shoved EJ again, harder this time. The boy stumbled, arms flailing, but before he could fall, Amara caught him. One hand braced on his shoulder, holding him steady. The cafeteria hushed. Jason laughed, mistaking the silence for fear. You want to fight? He taunted. Come on, show us something. His fist cocked back, knuckles white. Gasps rippled across the room. Phones zoomed in. EJ's chest tightened. "Amara," he whispered, panic in his voice. Jason swung, but Amara wasn't there. With one fluid so deep, graceful as water, she let his fist cut through empty air. His momentum betrayed him, sending him stumbling forward. And with a gentle redirection, just a pivot of her hips, a touch of her hand, Jason slammed into the table with a crash that shook the cafeteria. Gasps erupted. Some screamed, others cursed. Phones shook and hands suddenly unsteady. Connor's face twisted. Fury replaced laughter. He charged, his bulk a wall of muscle, swinging his leg in a sloppy kick aimed at EJ. But Amara was faster. Her hands moved like lightning. She caught his leg, twisted, redirected. Connor flipped like a rag doll, landing flat on his back with a thud that rattled trays. Silence. The cafeteria was no longer laughing. It was watching, and for the first time all year, EJ Whitmore stood tall, his crutch returned to him by the calm, steady hand of the girl everyone thought invisible. Jason scrambled up from the table, face red, eyes wide with disbelief. The cafeteria was frozen. Every phone camera locked on the one thing they never expected. Era Johnson standing tall, calm, her breath steady, as if she'd simply brushed away a fly. She hadn't even raised her voice, hadn't thrown a single punch. Yet Jason lay sprawled, Connor groaning on the floor beside him. The silence was unbearable. And then someone whispered, "Did you see that?" Another. She didn't even hit him. The realization spread through the crowd like fire. This wasn't rage. This wasn't luck. This was control. Jason staggered back to his feet, fists trembling. He lunged again, wild, desperate to reclaim the crowd. But Amara didn't move until the last second. Her body shifted like flowing water, redirecting his weight, guiding him past her with nothing more than balance and precision. Jason slammed into the cafeteria wall, the breath leaving his lungs. Phones shook harder. Gasps turned into screams. "What is that?" someone shouted. But Amara's expression never changed. She wasn't fighting. She was demonstrating. And somewhere deep inside her, another voice echoed. Her father's. The memory was sharp, as if it lived in her bones. A hot summer afternoon. The dojo smelled of sweat and old wood. Sunlight cut through the broken blinds, dust floating in golden beams. She was 10 years old, her fists clenched, tears burning in her eyes. "Dad, why can't I just hit them back?" she demanded. "They push me every day at school. They laugh at me. Why can't I show them I'm strong?" Master Anthony Johnson, her father, crouched in front of her. His GI was frayed, his knuckles scarred, but his eyes were calm. He tapped her fists gently until they opened. "Because Amara," he said, his voice steady, "strength isn't about proving you can hurt someone. Strength is knowing you don't have to." She blinked, confused. "But what if they don't stop?" His smile was small, sad, but proud. "Then you stand, you move, you protect, but you never start. You never fight for ego. You fight for one reason only." He lifted her chin, his gaze locking with hers. "To protect the weak." Back in the cafeteria, those words thrummed through her veins. Jason staggered toward her again, panting, sweat dripping down his forehead. His arrogance was cracking, replaced by something unfamiliar, fear. "Stand down, Jason!" someone shouted from the crowd. But he didn't listen. He swung again, clumsy, desperate. Amara pivoted, guided his arm, and with the same gentle redirection her father once showed her, sent him tumbling safely onto the floor. She didn't smirk, didn't gloat. She simply opened her palms and stepped back. Connor tried once more, roaring as if noise alone could intimidate her. He rushed forward, but Amara intercepted, catching his wrist mid-swing. In one seamless motion, she twisted, flipped him, and pinned him with just enough pressure to hold him still. The cafeteria erupted. But this time it wasn't laughter. It was awe. Phones zoomed closer. Whispers shot across the room. "She's trained." "No, that's martial arts. Real martial arts." "Who even is she?" Amara stood over Jason and Connor, her breathing steady, her eyes calm. To anyone else, it looked like magic. To her, it was just discipline. She bent down, picked up EJ's crutch, and placed it gently back in his hands. "Stand tall," she whispered, and for the first time, EJ did. His shoulders straightened, his eyes lifted. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was standing. The cafeteria wasn't watching a fight anymore. They were witnessing a legacy. The cafeteria hadn't even caught its breath when the doors burst open. Vice Principal Sinclair stormed in, heels like gavel strikes against the tile. Her sharp eyes locked immediately on Amara, not Jason slumped against the table. Not Connor still sprawled on the floor. "Amara, you too," She barked, fingers stabbing the air like a verdict, suspended, effective immediately. The cafeteria gasped. Phones swung toward her. What? That's not fair. They didn't start it. But Mrs. Sinclair didn't flinch. I saw enough. Violence is unacceptable, no matter the excuse. Jason smirked weakly from the floor, wiping juice off his shirt. For a second, he thought he'd gotten away with it until Jasmine stepped forward. She was a junior, her phone still raised high. Her voice shook but carried across the room. No, ma'am. You didn't see enough because I recorded everything. Gasps shot across the crowd. All eyes swung to the glowing screen in her hand. Jason's smirk cracked. Connor shifted uncomfortably. Jasmine walked straight to the smartboard on the cafeteria wall. With a tap, her video lit up the screen. Jason's shove. EJ stumbling. Connor's kick. Amara moving calm and precise, never striking first. The room was silent except for the sounds from the video. Jason's laughter, Connor's taunts, the cafeteria chanting, "Fight, fight, fight," before both bullies hit the floor by their own momentum. Mrs. Sinclair's face flushed crimson. That doesn't excuse. It shows the truth, Amara said quietly, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. We didn't fight for ego. We didn't throw the first punch. We only stood when we had to. The cafeteria erupted. Cheers, claps, even a few tears from kids who knew too well what it felt like to be cornered. Justice, someone shouted. Play it again, another yelled. Phones turned, now recording Mrs. Sinclair herself. She straightened, but her authority was crumbling under the weight of proof and witnesses. Jason tried to rise again, his pride desperate for one last gasp. This isn't over, he growled, pointing at Amara. But EJ, standing tall with his crutch steady, finally spoke. His voice trembled at first, then grew strong. Yes, it is. The room froze. EJ had never stood, never spoken back. Not like this. His words landed heavier than any punch could. The chant swelled again. This time, not for a fight, but for truth. Justice. 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 Amara didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She just placed a steady hand on EJ's shoulder and whispered the same words she had minutes earlier. Stand tall. And he did. For the first time, Crestwood's cafeteria wasn't ruled by arrogance or cruelty. It was ruled by discipline, by truth, by two kids who refused to break. By nightfall, the fight wasn't just Crestwood's secret anymore. The clip hit Instagram first. A shocky 40-con video with the caption, "Charity girl just folded the school bullies. Doors discipline beats arrogance." Within an hour, TikTok had turned it into edits. Slow motion of Jason's fist slicing air. Dramatic music swelling as Amara pivoted and sent him crashing into the table. Comments flooded in. Bro, she's a weapon. Notice how she never swung first. That's discipline. Girl just humbled Crestwood's golden boys in 10 seconds flat. By midnight, it had spilled onto Twitter. There were shot-up trending lists. # stand tall. There's Amara Johnson. # discipline over arrogance. Even local news anchors couldn't ignore it. The Sixth segment replayed the cafeteria footage side by side with an old photo unearthed by someone online. A younger Amara bowing in a cracked dojo. Her father, Master Anthony Johnson, standing tall behind her. Tonight, the anchor announced, a scholarship student defended a classmate against bullies at Crestwood Academy. But the world is now learning she's not just any student. She's the daughter of a man many in Detroit, remember? A martial arts instructor who taught kids discipline, confidence, and respect. That legacy lives on in her. The camera cut back to the clip. Amara returning EJ's crutch, whispering, "Stand tall." Millions replayed that line. Millions quoted it. For kids who'd been mocked, for parents who'd prayed their children would find courage. It was more than just a cafeteria fight. It was a lesson. But the biggest shift wasn't online. It was in a penthouse suite overlooking the city skyline. Richard Whitmore stared at a phone he usually treated like a weapon. He was halfway through a merger email when the notification slid across the screen. Billionaire's son targeted by bullies. Watch who stands up for him. He almost ignored it. Then he saw the freeze frame. EJ's crutch in the air like a trophy. Play. The cafeteria poured out of the screen. The shove, the tray, the chant. He saw the way EJ's shoulders curled in, a posture Richard recognized and hated because he'd seen it for months and told himself it would pass. Then a girl stepped into frame, calm. The room moved like a tide around her and somehow stilled. Richard leaned forward without realizing, thumb, hovering over the screen. She didn't swing. She redirected. The boys toppled over their own momentum while she kept EJ on his feet. When she placed the crutch back in his hand, Richard heard a voice he hadn't remembered in years. "Clara, the stars don't care how fast you walk, EJ. They shine for you anyway. Play again slower." He watched EJ rise. Watched his son say, "Yes, it is," with a steadiness that didn't belong to fear. The room in the video roared. The one in the penthouse went silent. He searched the comments, the captions, the tags. A name surfaced over and over. Amara Johnson. Another photo surfaced. A cracked floor dojo. A man in a worn go smiling beside a much younger Amara. Master Anthony Johnson. Obituary links. Community posts. Words like discipline, respect, protect the weak. Richard set the phone down face up on the table and for once didn't reach for the next email. He reached for memory, the missed recital, the rescheduled therapy appointments, the nights he told himself he was providing while EJ learned to be small. He picked the phone back up and typed, then deleted, then typed again. He remembered the night EJ asked why stars shine brighter than he ever could, and Richard hadn't known what to say to EJ. "Proud of you. I'm here on my way." He hit send, then another text, this time to his assistant. "Cancel the 300 p.m. reschedule the board. I'm going to Crestwood." The driver met him at the curb. The car cut through late-day traffic. Richard watched the clip a third time with the sound off. Without audio, what remained was posture. A girl who chose control over spectacle. A boy who chose to stand. At a red light, he opened a blank note and wrote a single line. "Ask, don't assume." Then beneath it, support what already exists. He didn't plan a press conference or a donation with his name in stone. He planned to listen to EJ first, then to the girl who had given his son a moment no fortune could buy. When the car stopped outside the school, Richard tucked the phone away. For once, he didn't lead with power. He led with presence. The next morning, Crestwood Academy's cafeteria wasn't a lunchroom. It was a courtroom, a reckoning. Jason Miller and Connor Hale shuffled in with shoulders hunched. Their swagger gone, their parents trailed behind them, polished in pearls and suits, their faces pale with the kind of humiliation money couldn't hide. Phones shot up instantly. Every student knew history was about to unfold. At the front stood Principal Harrington, stiff in his pressed suit, papers trembling in his hand. He cleared his throat. "Yesterday's incident has received widespread attention." The understatement drew a ripple of laughter. Even teachers hiding in the back couldn't suppress smirks. "Video evidence," Harrington continued, "has made the truth clear. The altercation was not initiated by Amara Johnson or Elijah Whitmore. They acted in defense with restraint." The words landed heavy. A wave of claps broke out, quickly swelling into thunder. Jason's face flushed red. Connor shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting at the phones recording his shame. "Jason." Connor Harrington turned, his voice flat. "Your families have insisted you take responsibility." Jason's father gave him a firm shove forward. Jason swallowed hard, his voice cracking. I'm sorry." He glanced at EJ, then Amara. "We shouldn't have mocked you. We shouldn't have pushed you. You didn't deserve that." Connor followed, jaw clenched. "We embarrassed ourselves. And our families." Gasps rippled. Not at the apology, but at how small their voices sounded compared to the laughter they'd once commanded. But Amara didn't nod. She didn't smile. She rose from her seat, calm, steady, her presence sharper than any fist. "Don't just apologize to us," she said evenly. "Apologize to everyone you've mucked, everyone you made small, because we weren't your first targets, just your last." The cafeteria froze. Her words cut deeper than any throw, any flip. Jason's lips trembled. Connor looked away, but then Jason turned, his voice louder this time. "We're sorry. To everyone." Connor nodded, forcing the words out. "We were wrong." The cafeteria erupted. Cheers, applause, stomping feet shaking the polished floor. The balance of power had shifted permanently. In a penthouse high above the skyline, Richard Whitmore sat on the couch beside his son. For once, no emails, no contracts, just silence, broken only by the sound of EJ laughing softly at a clip of himself standing tall. Richard's voice cracked. "Your mother always said someone would help you stand tall. I think we just met her." EJ looked at him, smiling faintly. "No, Dad, she didn't just help me stand. She helped you too." For the first time in years, Richard reached over and wrapped his arm around his son. No words, just presence. And in that moment, wealth and privilege felt smaller than two things money couldn't buy. Courage and connection. They mocked a boy for his limp. They sneered at a girl for being quiet. They thought wealth and cruelty ruled the room. But when fists flew, it wasn't strength that silenced the crowd. It was discipline. Amara Johnson didn't need designer clothes, money, or loud words. She carried her father's code and gave EJ back his voice. Together, they showed Crestwood Academy that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply stands and refuses to fall. And in a cafeteria built on privilege, two kids no one believed in taught everyone the loudest lesson. The calm smooth can shake the loudest room. This isn't just about EJ or Amara. It's about every kid who walks the halls feeling invisible. Every parent who wonders if their lessons still matter. Every bully who thinks silence is weakness because silence isn't weakness. Sometimes silence is exactly what ends them. This is Black Stories, where the underestimated rise and arrogance collapses under its own weight. If this story moved you, like this video and share it. Share it for every child who's been mocked. For every parent who's prayed their child would find courage. For every voice that's been ignored until it finally stood tall. And subscribe for more stories like this, because bullies only win when courage stays quiet. And courage only wins when we refuse to look. Wins when we refuse to look.